On April 28, 2025, the US Navy lost a $67 million fighter jet. Not because it was shot down, not because the engine failed in midair, the aircraft never even took off. An A-18E Super Hornet was being towed through the hangar bay of the USS Harry Truman when the ship made a sudden hard turn to avoid a healthy threat. Deep inside the carrier, the crew handling the aircraft lost control. The fighter jet, along with the tow tractor still attached to its nose gear, slid overboard and dropped straight into the Red Sea. One sailor was injured, the jet sank, it was never recovered. And to understand how something like that can happen, you have to understand the hangar bay itself. Because on an aircraft carrier, the most dangerous part of naval aviation is not always the flight deck. Sometimes it is the space just below it, the part of the ship most cameras almost never reach. Most people have seen the famous footage. Fighter jets blast off the deck at 165 miles per hour. Landing aircraft slam into arresting wires at around 150, then stop in less than 2 seconds. It looks violent because it is, but the flight deck is only the visible part of the operation. One deck below, tucked inside the hull, is the space that makes all of it possible. On a Nimitz class carrier, the hangar bay stretches roughly 650 feet long, 108 feet wide, and about 25 feet high. That is more than 2/3 the length of the entire ship. But this is not a quiet warehouse with aircraft parked neatly in rows. When the carrier is operating, that space is crowded, hot, loud, and constantly moving. More than 60 aircraft can be packed into that environment. F/A-18 Super Hornets, E-2D Hawkeyes, MH-60 Seahawk helicopters, and increasingly F-35C Lightning IIs. Their wings can sit just feet apart. Every remaining corner is filled with spare engines, hydraulic gear, tool carts, weapons equipment, and support gear. This is not a garage. It is an armed airbase sealed inside a steel hull, running around the clock in the middle of the ocean. Before a fighter jet can launch, it has to be inspected. It may need fuel, something from the last mission may need repair, and before any of that happens, someone has to move the aircraft to the right spot on the right deck at exactly the right time. Every step runs through the hangar bay. The hangar is divided into separate sections with massive steel fire curtains that can seal one area off from another if smoke or heat is detected. That matters because the ship is carrying jet fuel, hydraulic fluid, live bombs, missiles, electrical systems, and a nuclear power plant. If a fire spreads in the wrong place, the entire ship can be in danger. Those curtains have one job: contain the fire before it becomes a ship-wide disaster. But there's one thing they cannot control. The ship itself never stops moving. Even on a normal day, the deck under your boots is not still. The carrier rolls, it pitches, it leans. Now add a 12 to 14-hour shift, 90-degree heat, tight clearances, fuel lines, weapons, and a steel floor that keeps shifting while crews move aircraft weighing tens of thousands of pounds. And then comes the moment nobody wants. The ship has to turn hard. That's why the Truman incident matters. When USS Harry Truman made that sudden turn in the Red Sea, the entire ship shifted with it. At that same moment, a crew was towing an F/A-18E Super Hornet through the hangar bay area. As the carrier leaned and the aircraft's weight shifted, the tow setup was hit with a sudden load it wasn't meant to absorb in that way. The jet moved, the tractor moved with it, and in seconds, both were gone. That's also why jet engines are not simply fired up inside the hangar. Exhaust in an enclosed space would be dangerous almost immediately. A jet engine produces extreme heat, violent airflow, and toxic fumes. An afterburner can reach temperatures around 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. In a closed shipboard space, that kind of force would put everyone nearby at risk. So, aircraft are moved by specialized tow tractors. They're small compared to the jets they pull, but they're powerful, low, and built for tight spaces. A metal tow bar connects the tractor to the aircraft's nose gear, and the crew slowly guides the aircraft through an environment where inches can matter. The sailors directing this movement are aircraft handlers. Much of the job comes down to hand signals, timing, muscle memory, and trust. Yellow jerseys guide the movement. Signal wands cut through the noise. A handler has to watch the aircraft, the tractor, nearby sailors, deck gear, ship motion, and aircraft parked just feet away. The clearance between wingtips can be less than 2 feet. One bad signal, one missed cue, 1 second of lost focus, and a 30-ton aircraft can hit another 30-ton aircraft. But the hangar itself is only one part of the system. Every aircraft below deck eventually has to go up, and every aircraft that lands above eventually has to come back down. That job belongs to the aircraft elevators. The aircraft elevators connect the hidden world below with the chaos above. On a Nimitz-class carrier, there are 4 of them. They are not building-style elevators. They sit along the edge of the ship outside the hull. When raised, they become part of the flight deck. When lowered, they become huge open steel platforms hanging over the side. Each elevator can carry around 100,000 pounds in a single trip. That is enough for 2 fully loaded fighter jets. The sequence sounds simple. A jet lands on the flight deck, catches the arresting wire, slows down, folds its wings, and gets directed toward the elevator. The platform lowers, the aircraft rolls into the hangar below deck. The maintenance crew is already waiting. Refuel it, inspect it, fix what needs fixing, rearm it, and send it back up. During heavy flight operations, that turnaround can happen in less than an hour. But if an elevator fails, the rhythm of the whole carrier can break. Aircraft can get stuck below when they are needed above, or stuck above when they need maintenance below. The air wing slows down, the carrier's striking power starts to bottleneck. On Ford-class carriers, there is another elevator system that barely gets the same attention. It does not move aircraft, it moves the things that make aircraft dangerous. A fighter jet without weapons is just an extremely expensive airplane. The bombs and missiles are stored deep inside the ship, in armored magazines surrounded by thick steel. Moving a nearly 2,000-pound bomb from deep below the waterline to the flight deck is not a routine warehouse job. It is high-risk work inside a moving warship. On Nimitz-class carriers, that work falls to aviation ordnance men, known as AOs. They move ordnance through the ship using dedicated routes, elevators, ramps, handling equipment, and strict procedures. Once the weapons reach the flight deck, crews load them under aircraft wings by hand, one station at a time. Ford-class carriers were built to change that workflow. Each Ford-class ship has 11 Advanced Weapons Elevators, or AWEs. Instead of traditional hydraulics, these elevators use electromagnetic motors. Each one is designed to move around 22,000 pounds of ordnance in a single lift. From the magazines to the flight deck, those weapons can travel nearly 1,500 feet. That is almost 5 football fields through the inside of a ship, while carrying live ordnance at sea. The problem is that these elevators became one of the most complicated systems on the Ford-class program. Software issues, mechanical problems, and reliability delays slowed progress. A 2025 congressional report noted that the second Ford-class carrier, USS John F. Kennedy, had its delivery pushed from July 2025 to March 2027, with weapons elevators still among the major delay drivers. The idea was brilliant. The execution has been painful. But while engineers keep working through those problems, the work inside the hangar bay never stops. All that dramatic flight deck footage does not happen on its own. Before the launch, before the roaring takeoff, there's a mechanic in the hangar bay at 2 a.m. tightening a hydraulic fitting. Someone else is replacing a landing gear bolt. Another sailor is pulling an avionics panel chasing a fault from the last mission. Nobody films most of that, but without it, nothing flies. Carrier landings are brutal on aircraft. A jet hits the deck at around 150 miles per hour. The tailhook grabs the arresting wire, and in less than 2 seconds, the aircraft goes from highway speed violence to a dead stop. That stress runs through the landing gear, airframe, hydraulic lines, wiring, tires, brakes, mounts, and every structural connection holding the aircraft together. Every landing leaves something to check. Sometimes it's routine, sometimes it's urgent, but it is never ignored. On Nimitz-class carriers, there's also a section at the stern called the fantail. It is one of the few places where a removed jet engine can be mounted to a test stand and run at high power in open air. Technicians pull the engine, secure it to the stand, run the checks, watch the numbers, listen for anything abnormal, then reinstall it. That cycle can continue for the entire deployment. While one engine is being tested at the stern, another aircraft may already be launching from the bow hundreds of feet away. And the only reason that controlled chaos works is because the hangar bay lives by rules that are enforced every day. No shortcuts, no excuses. Every sailor who works around aircraft learns one word almost immediately: FOD, foreign object debris. That means anything on the deck that does not belong there. A loose bolt, a dropped washer, a piece of safety wire, a torn glove, a forgotten tool. It can look harmless on the floor, but if that object gets sucked into a jet engine spinning at thousands of revolutions per minute, it can destroy the engine. In the worst case, it can cost a pilot their life. So FOD control is not just a checklist, it's a ritual. Sailors line up shoulder to shoulder and walk the deck slowly, scanning every inch for debris. Tools are logged, equipment is accounted for. If something is missing, work can stop until it's found. That level of discipline may look excessive from the outside, but at sea, one missing screw can become $1 million problem. The second word is fire. Inside the hangar bay, fire is the nightmare scenario. You have fuel, hydraulic fluid, electrical systems, hot machinery, and weapons all sharing the same steel space. That's why sailors train for fire from the beginning, not just classroom training, but repeated drills until the response becomes automatic. Because on a carrier, there's no fire department coming from town. If a fire breaks out at sea, the people who stop it are already inside the ship, and they may have less than a minute to keep it from spreading. The F-35C's radar-absorbent coating helps reduce its visibility to enemy radar, but that coating is sensitive. Saltwater, humidity, routine handling, and constant wear can all create problems. Some photos of F-35Cs at sea have shown visible surface corrosion after long deployments. And when the stealth coating is damaged, it's not just cosmetic. It can affect the aircraft's radar signature. That means the repair has to be done carefully with specialized tools and trained technicians right there in the hangar bay while the ship is still underway. Then there's the MQ-25A Stingray. On April 25, 2026, the first production aircraft completed its maiden flight. This is Boeing's carrier-based aerial refueling drone designed to become the first operational unmanned aircraft to fly from a US carrier. The Navy plans to buy more than 70 of them, with integration into carrier wings expected to begin this year. That matters because A-18E Super Hornets spend a major part of their workload acting as tankers for other aircraft. In some operations, up to 30% of their missions can be tied to refueling support. The MQ-25 is meant to take over that job. That gives the Super Hornets more room to do what they were built to do, fight. But adding an unmanned tanker changes the maintenance picture. There's no pilot climbing into the cockpit, but there's software to update, sensors to calibrate, data links to test, and control systems to check before the drone touches the flight deck. For decades, carrier maintenance was built around crewed aircraft. Now the Navy has to maintain manned jets and unmanned aircraft in the same cramped, moving, high-risk space. The playbook is still being written, and it's being written at sea. That is what makes the hangar bay so important. A land base has options. If an aircraft breaks badly enough, it can be sent to a depot. Specialists can be flown in. Rare parts can arrive the next morning. More equipment can be trucked across the base. A carrier does not have that luxury. Everything needed to fight, recover, repair, rearm, and fight again has to be loaded before the ship leaves port. Every spare engine, every panel, every tool, every weapons cart, every technician, every replacement part, every gallon of fuel, every bomb and missile. All of it goes to sea inside that hull. That is why the hangar bay is the real core of an aircraft carrier. The flight deck gets the attention because it's loud, dramatic, and easy to film, but the hangar bay is where the endurance of the ship is actually built. It is where damaged aircraft become flyable again, where weapons move from storage to mission, where crews fight fatigue, heat, noise, motion, and risk just to keep the air wing alive. Without a working hangar bay, the flight deck is just a massive slab of steel. But when the hangar bay is alive, the carrier becomes something much more dangerous. A self-contained airfield, a repair depot, a weapons platform, a floating city that can launch, recover, fix, fuel, and rearm its aircraft again and again, thousands of miles from home, without needing a runway, a port, or a friendly shoreline.